Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I need to get me a coffee cup like that.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss The Cabin in the Woods, which released in 2011 from writers Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard, and directed by Drew Goddard. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows 5 college kids who are heading up to a cabin in the woods for a weekend of drinking and partying. But when they get up there, they secretly are part of a ritual controlled by the American government to appease a sleeping elder god underneath their feet. As each one of the teens is killed off, we follow the last few survivors trying to find out how to stop the monster from awakening.
Well, they may be zombified, pain-worshipping backwoods idiots.
But there are zombified, pain-worshipping backwoods idiots.
So this film kind of went a little bit under the radar for a lot of people when it came out. A lot of people also say it's very underrated and near forgotten. But if you were a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Angel or Joss Whedon, for that matter, who had worked with Drew Goddard on both of those shows, you were very much aware of any projects that he was working on. And according to Joss and to Drew, they challenged each other to come up with a film idea in 3 days.
Wow.
So they locked themselves away in a hotel for 3 days, and they both just wrote this film, and they got it done in that short space of time. I was like, that's kind of incredible when you think about it. But Drew also said that he was inspired by something that happened, like, that he was aware of when he was growing up.
Right.
In New Mexico, he was surrounded daily by scientists going about their daily routine, making nuclear and atomic weapons. And so he then kind of used that as the template for Citizen and Hadley that we get introduced to right at the beginning in their office, going about their daily routines, working on potentially world-ending stuff.
Yeah.
And it was also something that Joss and Drew thought was kind of a little bit of a joke, where we have the horror credits to begin with, but then you have 2 office guys just chatting about mundane stuff. And they thought it would be kind of a joke that audiences would be sat there going, wait a minute, I think I'm in the wrong film, and start getting up to walk out until the title suddenly drops on the screen. You're like, oh, okay, I am in the right film. But it's just tonally goes against everything that usual horror movies would do, where you have the first kill, the thing that establishes what is going to happen. But this film goes, we're going to do things slightly different.
Yeah. Which was really, really nice. Like you said, you know, we'd followed Whedon's career through Angel, through Buffy, Alien Resurrection had come and gone. You know, Firefly and Serenity, the movie, had their little moment, and we were just like, oh man, you know, Whedon's not really getting the praise he should. And then all of a sudden we get Cabin in the Woods is coming out, and I remember, like you said, it kind of came and went under the radar, and I was really shocked.
Me too.
Because I'd kind of started wikiing movies at that point and had got a little bit of an understanding of the plot and thought, oh my god, how are people, you know, missing this? This is so original. It's taken everything that we know about horror movies over the last 20 to 30 years and has just turned it upside down, slapped on its head, slapped us in the face with it and gone, haha, you thought you knew the tropes. Well, we're going to take those very same tropes and we're going to trope it up in front of your face. And you're like, and like you said, with this opening with Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, like, these 2 actors, I think, are absolutely brilliant. You know, Richard Jenkins, the dad from Step Brothers. You know, I know these guys have been in a heck of a load of stuff, but if you've ever seen Step Brothers, you know, especially when they're like, hey, can we make bunk beds? And he's like, I don't care, just go to bed, you know. And then Bradley Whitford recently, or not recently, like 4 years ago, you know, he was the dad in Get Out, which, you know, another great horror movie. But the 2 of them just at this coffee machine, just having an everyday conversation. And then all of a sudden the screen comes along, the titles come up. You're like, okay, I am still watching the same movie. We've just had, Amy Acker turn up.
Right.
And start talking about how Stockholm has failed. And so you're like, Stockholm has failed doing what?
Right.
You know? What are you doing? I thought you were blue the last time I saw you, Amy.
Yeah, and then the film, I guess, starts Well, properly.
Yeah, properly.
As we get introduced to all of our teens, and it's a very typical setup.
Yes.
Like, okay, the teens are getting ready to go to this cabin. I love Marty's introduction. You see him pull up in that car with that giant bong that's also a coffee flask.
That's amazing. I love that cup.
I also love the little detail, and this is apparently something that Drew was that incorporated like his own backgrounds and stuff into the script. Where when he gets out of the car, he locks the door, but the windows are still wound down. It's just like, what?
It's his logic. He's just like, police aren't going to stop me. If they saw a man driving along with a bong this big, they're like, he knows things. We're not going to challenge his viewpoint. But it's amazing to take that twist, because for years, the stoner in horror movies was always like the second or third person to die. He stumbles outside and he gets stabbed in the throat. And so you're looking at this guy thinking, oh, he's going to be dead within the first 10 seconds.
Yep.
And yet actually he's the smartest person. He's got some of the best script lines throughout them all. You know, we get introduced to Kurt Vaughn, played by Chris Hemsworth. I mean, Thor is in this movie.
Yeah. Well, he recorded this before he was then cast in the Avengers and in the Thor stuff. Because when this film was shot and completed, MGM kind of sat on it for a little bit. They put it on the shelf.
They did.
And then MGM went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So this film sat there for years.
Yes.
And it was only eventually, like after Thor had come out, Lionsgate were looking at MGM's shelved movies and went, hey, wait a minute. How come you never release it? Oh, okay. Well, we'll buy it and we'll put it out there. And so, it came out after Thor. And so you'd think even more people would actually come and see this based on Chris Hemsworth. But no, they didn't.
Well, no, because it was still kind of fresh. I remember this movie coming out and the advertising was like, oh, it's done by Joss Whedon. But it's not. It's produced. You know, there's a whole different director. Oh, it's starring Chris Hemsworth. You're like, who? Thor. And you're like, oh, Thor's in it. Yeah, but he's not the lead. You know, the lead is Kristen Connolly playing Dana Polk. And I mean, if you're experienced with horror movies, you can just see the tropes that they're throwing onto her character. She's this young girl who's just come out of a bit of a fling with her teacher. And so that's kind of just brushed under the carpet. She's like, I slept with my teacher. Okay, move on.
Right? It's quite a taboo subject that the film just kind of goes, let's move on.
Yeah. I love her friend Jules, played by Anna Hutchinson, who, you know, she instantly starts to become the blonde character that you see in horror movies because she's dyed her hair. But that's all part of the paranoia, you know, the secret governmental plan. You know, we find out that actually they've got chemicals in the dye that are going to make Jules
the dumb blonde character.
Her levels are good, but we're recommending a 50 milligram bump of rohiptase to increase libido.
So,
Do we pipe it in, or do you want to do it orally? The hair dye
dumb blonde, very artistic.
works its way into the blood through the scalp, very gradual.
You know, she's actually doing these, you know, big college classes with her boyfriend, things like that. And so we see them all, you know, get introduced.
It's the same with the Kurt character, where he's also like a major. You know, he's studying and etc. And then later on in the film, when they're at the cabin, Marty's just like, I don't know what's with him. Like he's turned into like a jock person, and he talks about women like they're pieces of meat. It's like he would never do that.
It's kind of funny with the Holden character as well. You know, he is the boy that's been brought along to be kind of the replacement love interest for Dana. But as the film goes on, he becomes the brain.
Right, yeah, the nerdy character.
I mean, he was already technically brainy already, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I read Latin, you know, when I was in year 10 of school. It's like, no normal person does that.
Right. And so like once they get to the cabin, we realize that the underground people, the scientists or the office workers, have been manipulating these teens to become the archetypal horror character victims for means we don't yet understand.
Well, if you'd been following the imagery in the credit sequence before the titles, you see a lot of sacrificing and sacrificial imagery. So you kind of got a theory, if you're ever experienced horror movies, that these guys are going to die, and the facility workers that we've seen are going to use them to prevent something. I mean, we've got the Harbinger.
Yes, Mordecai.
And Mordecai at the gas station.
It's in almost every horror movie, isn't it? Where they're driving obviously when they have to get gas, and there's the creepy old guy warning them, you don't want to go down that road.
Don't go down that road. Don't go that way. And they do.
Yeah.
And he rings up the facility guys, and he's you know, giving off this horrible, ominous kind of speech. But then he's like, am I on speakerphone? You can't put me on speakerphone. He just gets completely embarrassed the fact that people are mocking him.
And he's like, yeah, we're sorry, Mordecai, I'll turn you back off. Right, carry on. And they leave him on speakerphone to keep talking. It's just great.
The Ancient Ones see everything, and they will not be... I'm still on speakerphone, aren't I?
I mean, one thing at this point as well, before we get too deep into it, like there is CGI used in this movie. There's that sequence with the bird. And I do love this shot, but I think as the years go on, I see it, that I look at the CGI and I'm like, oh yeah, it's starting to look a little bit dated. But this shot, I think, is just absolutely brilliant because we see the RV go into the little tunnel into the mountain as they head towards the cabin. And we're watching this CGI bird flying. And then it just hits this invisible holographic electronic wall and dies. And you're like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, they're like, okay, so now we know they've driven in through this tunnel. They are kind of, we don't know, in my mind it's like a dome.
Yes,
but
yeah.
it is like, you don't see it curved at all, so it is kind of like a straight line, a barrier of some kind. But yeah, you know, once they're in there, they're probably not going to get back out.
No.
And nothing else can get in there, and whatever's in there probably can't get out as well.
Well, it's a controlled environment, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful that obviously Drew Goddard must have watched Evil Dead like,
well, of course,
a bazillion times, because the shot leading up of the cabin in there, you know, and Dana walking in, you know, just the layout of everything. It's so Sam Raimi.
It is.
It's so beautiful.
Especially when the trap door flings itself open. It's like,
They should make more cabins like that for horror film goers. I would fucking easily stay in one every fucking summer.
For
fun.
And so, of course, like, well, it couldn't have been the wind. Let's go down there and see what's down there.
Well, I mean, before they do go into the cellar, we did have that two-way mirror sequence.
It's true, yeah. There's like 20 minutes of all of the tropey sort of teen in the cabin stuff, but yeah, like there is like discovering the creepy nature of the cabin and that two-way mirror, and it establishes and gives the characters a little bit room to grow and to change into their archetypes as well.
But it's also showing you, the audience, that, you know, everything's kind of been set up, and the only person who's kind of getting an idea is Marty. You know, he's pretty sure he wanted to get off the grid. That's what he said in the RV. But he doesn't understand it. He's actually so in the frigging grid, deeper than anybody else. And so when that trapdoor flings open and they're going down there, he's like, why are we down here? He's the only one of them who's like, we should all get out. We should stop playing with all of this stuff. And you start to see all the different relics, all these different items that are obviously cursed or used to raise horrible things. I mean, we've got like the Wish version of the fucking Cenobite cube, which is basically a ball,
Yeah, and you've got Jules. She's playing with the necklace of the bride.
Yeah,
you know, and Dana's playing with this old diary. Yeah. Kurt's playing with the lament configuration sphere.
Holden's about to play with this little ballerina box music.
Yeah, Kurt's got the conch and he's about to blow into it. And
want a merman so bad.
Yeah, because it cuts back like as they're all of the office workers are just like, oh, okay, so let's start taking bets, everyone.
Yes.
Who's it going to be? Who's going to be our monster of the year? Yeah. And everyone's just like, it's going to be zombies. It's going to be the unicorn. It's going to be the redneck zombies. It's because like there's two different categories.
I absolutely love that, because there's a fine balance in horror movies to have horror and comedy. You know, too much comedy and you're just laughing at all the death, and too much death and the jokes fall flat. Cabin in the Woods manages to balance it so perfectly that every time we see the teens, we're scared, we're paranoid that they could get jumped at any point by some horrible monster. But every time we see the office workers, it's fun. They're working, they're stressed, but they want to party, they want to take money. They just, you know, and you see that soldier stood there going, I'm not making bets. And they're like, look, you think what we're doing is harsh, but you don't realize that this is for a bigger picture. And so this is us just blowing off steam for the horrible things that we have to do.
Yeah. And of course, it's Dana eventually distracts everyone else by going, no, I'm going to read this paragraph from the book.
Don't read the Latin.
And then, and there's like, oh, there's a bit in Latin. And Marty's like, well, that's where I definitely draw the line in the sand. Like, we definitely do not want to be reading from a strange book out loud. But she just does it anyway.
Well, because obviously she's being manipulated by whatever.
By pheromones and whatever other way that the office is controlling them.
Yeah.
And the moment she reads it, we see the Buckner family start climbing up out of the ground. These zombies. Yeah, and then back to the office, and everyone's like, hey, celebrating who's going to be. And of course, it's Hadley who's just like, oh, I really wish it was going to be a merman, not the damn Buckners again. And Saracen's like, well, the Buckners, they've got 100% clean rate, so, we don't really have to worry. But don't party just yet. And of course, the teens are still partying in the house. There's a sequence I have to bring up because it's kind of a wow moment.
Yeah.
And that is when they're playing Truth or Dare.
Oh, yeah.
Jules is asked Truth or Dare, and she's like, Dare. And then she's forced by Marty to go and make out with that moose head over there. It's like, oh, it's not a moose head, a little bit high. The wolf head.
Yeah.
And, like wow. It wasn't a real taxidermy wolf head.
No,
it was a real prop, and it was a removable silicone tongue that they'd sprinkled lots of confetti or sugary substance on it, so it's really sweet. So when she's tonguing it,
she really is. Yeah, I like how they managed to do that with the Jules character, and especially the actress playing her, was that while they're in the cabin, she is just becoming this sexually driven blonde who's just she's been manipulated to be the whore, as they're calling her. She doesn't have to have sex, but she does have to at least be promiscuous enough that she pleases whatever is going on. And Kurt's deciding, no, I'm going to take my girlfriend out into the woods, because I want to get some action. And the two of them walk out there into this environment, and you just got to keep reminding yourself that it's all controlled by these people underneath the ground, and so they're able to activate pheromones.
She's just like, I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
And so activate the pheromone mist.
Activate the pheromones. Oh, I'm a bit cold. Right, let's turn the temperature up.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't look nice enough, and so they make some moonlight come in as well. And so it's just absolutely set up.
It is, and I would love that you've got everyone in the office all there waiting for some nudity, and they're like, show us the goods.
Yeah, come on, show us the goods. And the security guy's just like, really? And he's just like, look, the people downstairs, they need to see it because then they'll be satisfied. And then you get that first attack.
Yes, she gets stabbed right in the hand, and it's brutal because it happens a lot in the horror movies where the sex scene goes right into the horror, snaps you right out of it, and she's screaming. Kurt ends up stabbed in the back. He pulls out this giant dagger, and he ends up knocking down one of the other Buckner zombies and manages to get away as Jules has been hit by the bear trap and pulled in. And then the Buckners hold her there, and they bring out this giant serrated saw. And we don't see it, but they decapitate her, and we'll see her decapitated head as the Buckners turn up at the cabin and throw it into the room.
That's what I've got to give credit to this movie as well. I constantly always forget that this movie is not an 18. Mm-hmm. Every time I always think of Cabin in the Woods, I'm like, it's massively gory, loads of people die. And yet, every time I go back and watch it, I'm like, it's a 15. And actually, it's really not bad in places. Yeah, it's going to get super gory at one point. But like I said, with this attack on Jules, every time you go to see something, it'll cut back to the facility and what they're doing. And so you get a little bit more story from them and less gory death, which is strange for a horror movie. And so we see Jules die, and we see them activate this kind of mechanism in the facility, and Kurt heads back to the cabin. Marty at this point is starting to hear voices, and he gets lured outside. And I love the fact you get the little girl starting to sneak up behind him every time he turns.
Yeah, it was before that, because when the Buckners almost siege the cabin.
Yeah.
Kurt's just like, everybody, I think we should all stick together.
Yes, yeah.
And then the guys in the office are like, no, we can't have that.
Yeah.
And then he's like, on second thought, let's all split up. And you're like, It's great because it knows it's a horror movie. It knows those are the tropes, and it needs these characters to behave like they're in a horror movie and split up and do all the wrong decisions. And it's a great commentary on those horror movies where you're like, okay, so when you rewatch horror movies and you see people do bad decisions, you're wondering who's pulling the strings.
Who's pulling the strings.
Right? And so, yeah, Marty ends up in his room and he can hear the voices saying, go for a walk.
Yeah,
go outside into the woods.
Well, yeah, after Kurt's come back, you know, they go back into the cabin, don't they? And the doors get all locked. They get locked in their rooms. And Marty's completely freaking out. You know, like I said, he's hearing voices. He's watching his friends make some of the most stupidest decisions. You know, what's going on? And then he finds this camera in the lamp. And he's realizing that, you know, well, it's a massive joke because he's like, I'm on a reality TV show. Yeah. And it's just like, he is so high. And then he gets dragged out of the window by one of the zombie people and he starts being, you know, attacked. And then he gets dragged into the pit and you see blood come up. And the guys in the facility activate the full sacrifice blood ritual thing. But the facility starts to shake. And you're like, oh.
Does it always do this?
Does it always do that? Yeah. What's going on? And we're cutting back to Holden and Dana in the cabin, and they obviously wanted to escape. They find a trapdoor which takes them down into the black room or the dark room that they'd read about.
The torture room of the Buckners. That it was described in the diary.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
and they're attacked by one of the big zombie guys, and I was very surprised that she just stabbed him repeatedly and he died.
Well, he's temporarily dead.
Well, we don't really see him ever again, do we?
I'm not sure, but in the behind the scenes, I know that he does come back again because they dress up his face like he has been stabbed and he's already removed it.
Right,
so,
yeah. Like, I'm like, this is a zombie redneck guy. Like, he should just be getting back up again. And they race to the RV, and that's where they back up with Kurt. And Kurt's just like, right, we got to go. And they jump in the RV and they start driving off. And as they're bombing off, one of the technicians in the facility realizes that they've not blown the explosives in the tunnel.
Right.
And so if they get out through the tunnel, they're fully escaped. And now it's massive panic. It's a massive twist now where you've got the survivors at the cabin panicking that they want to escape, and then you've got the people in the facility panicking because they don't want them to escape. It
is great.
So great.
And the tension's ever so much higher as well because the other rituals around the world are failing.
Yes.
We cut to the monitor and we see in Japan that the little girls are now banishing the angry spirit. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite scenes where he's just like, fuck you. How hard is it to kill 9-year-olds? I mean, really? Yeah. That's great. And it cuts to another monitor and we see Madrid, which is supposed to be Dracula. So that one's failed.
Right.
It cuts to Buenos Aires where there's a King Kong.
Oh, that's what that is. Yeah.
And they also cut to Stockholm as well, and you see the chopper flying out, and that's John Carpenter's The Thing. So that's failed as well.
Oh, right. Wow.
So I was like, wow, that's great.
Nice.
Like, all of these little references all over the world.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, so they've accounted for all the horror movies around the world that are being told.
Yeah.
And they're all failing today. So now America is the only facility that's ritual is still going that can be complete. And so the tension is there that these kids are escaping the facility. Now they're driving away from the cabin. They need to get them back.
And it's the idea as well that we're getting the thought process from the facility guys that if they fail, the whole world is dead. And so part of you as an audience member is like, well, then we don't want those people to escape.
Right.
We want them to die, right?
Right.
And they manage to blow the tunnel. And Thor reverses the RV back out the tunnel. And he's just like, what's going on? Why can't we escape? Blah, blah. I need to get over to the other side of this gorge. And so he gets his bike out the back. And Chris Hemsworth gives this great fucking speech. You can see why he became Thor. You can see why when he gets that sequence at the end of Infinity War and Endgame where he's like, give me his head. You know, it kind of comes from this hero speech where he's just like, I'm going to jump this gorge. I'm going to go get the police. I'm going to go get guys with big guns. They're going to come back and they're going to kill those zombie fucks. 4 jewels. And you're like, yes, 4 jewels. He's a proper boyfriend. He's not forgetting his girlfriend. He's not being a coward. And then he makes that run.
That force field, you mean head first, like smash right into it and just tumbles all the way down.
And he just keeps hitting it as he goes down. It's so good. It's so good.
I mean, because it was perfectly established earlier on, we know it's there the whole time.
Yeah.
And so when he hits it, you're prepared for it, but still not.
Yeah.
It is a great moment. It really is. So memorable.
It's just like any horror movie by taking the strongest character and then just killing him off. So now you've got the last girl and the brain, and you know the brain's not going to fucking make it because they never do.
Yeah.
They jump back into the RV. They're heading back, and Holden's just like, look, we're just going to drive right through the cabin. We're going to go out the other side. We're going to escape. She's like, look, we're not going to be able to leave. They're not going to let us go. And he's just like, no, we're going to. And then all of a sudden, bang, he gets that blade in his head.
Yeah. And then the RV crashes, goes off the side and into the water.
Yeah.
Fills up with water, and she does manage to escape. She gets some air. She manages to climb up. The zombie still grabbing hold of her, but she manages to surface. And I have to say, there's a really nice transition edit here.
Yeah.
Where as she's coming to the surface, it cuts to the beer then being picked up out of the ice water.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was a great transition. The entire office are now celebrating and having a party.
Yeah.
Because the ritual is complete. And one of the guys like, is it complete? She's still alive. They're like, whether the virgin girl survives at the end or not doesn't really matter.
It's optional.
So long as she suffers. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it makes sense, because that is every damn horror movie where the final girl does suffer and almost seems to have plot armor to an extent as well.
Yeah.
And so they're not even watching on the monitors as she's just being wrestled with and thrown around.
Yeah.
They just, the drinks are flowing. But then the telephone starts to ring in the background. He's like, what? Everybody,
the big
turn
red
the music
phone.
off. You're right. Yes, you know something's bad, and he answers the phone. He's like, "Right, something's not right." And we find out that Marty is still alive, and he saves Dana on that little pier.
Yeah,
and it's great because he's got his bong and his coffee is also now a makeshift weapon. Right?
Yeah.
And he's like, Dana, come with me. This is where I nearly died. Look, there's a fucking trapdoor. It goes down into an elevator. Let's go see where it goes.
Yeah, I reckon I can make it go down. And she's just like, should we? And he's like, well, where else are we going to go? And I'm like, that's true. The tunnel's blocked.
Yeah.
You know outside is fucking dangerous as fuck. This is the best. This is going into hell, but you don't know. And it leads into one of the best sequences I think I've seen in any horror movie for a very long time, where they climb inside this box cell elevator thing, and you realize that's where the zombies had come from. And I suppose, they can't die, can they? Because that zombie arm is still kind of moving around, isn't it? And they start moving down, and you just get introduced to the multitude of boxes that this facility has to house creatures that can be used in the ritual. We'd been already told by the technicians that they can't just kill the teens. They can't just send them out and kill the teens. The teens have to choose how they die, and they have to willingly sin to be killed by whatever it is that they've risen up, so that the Ancient One is entertained or enjoys it, or is just like, yeah, okay, I'll let you humans live for another year or whatever. It's vague and ambiguous what the Ancient One really is, but that's great because I can make up my own stuff. And so then you just see the different things. You've got the ghost, you've got the werewolf, you've got the little ballerina girl with the weird fucked up Sarlacc face.
And then you've also got Fornicus, the Lord of Bondage and Pain.
Yeah.
Of course, is literally a lift from Hellraiser.
Which they should have just got Pinhead in. They should have just paid Doug Bradley. That might have got the movie pushed out even more. But then would that have just been a massive joke if you're taking another horror franchise and making a joke for it? The fact that you're just paying homage to it gives it a bit more respect.
It is. It's just all the archetypes of all those monsters and creatures. And all the monsters, you're like, I've seen that movie. I've seen that movie. I know who that is. I've seen them. And now there's one thing in here as well that, it's hard to catch. You can definitely see the boomer from Left 4 Dead.
Oh, really?
And of course the tank and the witch and the hunter are also in one of those cubes.
Oh.
And that was because there was going to be a Left 4 Dead 3 stages of the Cabin in the Woods levels for the game.
Oh, wow.
So the monsters also appeared in the film.
Yeah.
But obviously the film got shelved.
Yeah.
And then the rights to it
Dead.
went, and so Left 4 Dead never could get to publish those maps,
Oh,
which is a real damn
that's
shame.
a damn shame,
But
yeah.
there are so many creatures in there, and some that you really can't really see because they're so small and moving around. I have got some behind the scenes here where you can see some of the creatures in front of green screens, and I love that the way that they did it, where they had different sized boxes with green screens. So because they all look the same size in this grid, they filmed tiny little boxes with insects in them.
Yeah.
So that then when they were there next to all the others, they looked huge in those boxes.
Oh.
They also got slightly smaller boxes as well and put a person in there so they looked like a giant in those boxes.
Right,
so
right.
like the scale kind of matters.
Yeah.
And then when you see all the boxes moving around, of course, they thought, yeah, it's a great idea on paper. Yet when it comes to the CGI guy animating, he's like, oh, how the hell do you do this?
Yeah, I gotta give that's the thing about this movie as well. This, like I said, with the comedy and horror, the practical effects and the computer generated effects is perfectly balanced. You know, they could have just gone completely overboard and gone, let's just do everything in CGI.
Yeah.
Or we could do everything in
Drew
practical.
said, I want to do everything practical that I can.
And they can, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you should do. You know, I think, you know, having, you know, Mr. Whedon helping him as well probably helped, because Mr. Whedon worked with a lot of practical effects himself, you know, and used the CGI to elevate the practical, and it works for this sequence that's coming up, which I think is just one of the greatest friggin' sequences in horror movie ever, where Marty and Dana they come down in their elevator. This guard has attacked them. They've gotten away from the guard, and this voice from the heavens that sounds strangely like Ripley tells them that they need to stop. They need them to forgive the facility for what they're going to do, because what they're doing is for a bigger picture, and they need to be stopped. And so Dana and Marty run behind this control room as all these armed guards come down attempting to kill them. And Dana's just like, let's just get this party started. And she opens up all of the cells.
Hits that purge button.
My God, yeah.
It is absolute pandemonium.
It's the dings. I think the dings.
The comedic touch.
Oh, yes. It's just perfect.
It is a great shot where all the security guards are there. All the doors open simultaneously, and all of the monsters at that level just burst out. And even one of my favorites, because it's listed on the whiteboard earlier on, the angry molesting tree. And I'm like, well, clearly that's Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And on the left side, you can see the tree come out and grab one of the guards and bring it in. I was like, yeah, there's my angry molesting tree.
Yeah.
Iconic horror monster for the ages.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you've got the wraith flying around. You've got the dismemberment goblins flying around. Like, I mean, you just want to pause it and just go, oh, all these horror creatures and monsters just having their way. It is amazing. It is a glorious monster mash.
Yeah. There's a fucking unicorn that stabs a guy in the gut.
Right.
Like,
yeah, you got one of the Reavers from Serenity throwing a guy off a balcony, which a giant CGI snake eats.
Yeah.
You've got this clown that's being shot at as it comes over and starts stabbing this guard. But also props to the guy in the clown makeup. He was actually the monster movement coach on the film, and he helped choreograph all of the monster and creature movements.
Yeah, I like, I mean, you got those people with like the doll faces that look like
The dolls,
a cross between the strangers and the purge.
You've got the doctors, like they're missing their eyes doing surgery.
Doing surgery, and just start watching from security monitors, because we cut back to the two technicians in their control room, and they are frantically trying to get things sorted because everything has now gone absolutely tits up since the film has started. You know, the security guard is trying to get hold of other security teams. Monsters are trying to smash their way through. We're just watching security monitors of people just dying left, right, and center. And I mean, I love that bit where like the other bunch of security guys come running around the corner, and there's all just blood in front of the elevators. And they're like, well, where is everybody? And then the elevators ding again, and you just know those guys have just been absolutely ripped to pieces.
It's one of those shots where they're in there and you got all the zombies eating, and then just after a delay, some blood and guts just drops from the ceiling.
Yeah, it's just
perfect.
Just splat. Dana and Marty have gotten out of the control room, and they've managed to get into like some kind of weird tunnel subsection. And we watch, unfortunately, Gary and Steve's control room get absolutely blown open, and a bunch of crazy scarecrow men come in.
That's right. They take Truman down. He
Truman,
blows himself
guy.
up with a grenade.
He blows himself up. Amy Acker is grabbed by a tentacle, sadly.
Like a kraken or something.
Yeah, and gets whipped off, or a Cthulhu or some elder
Right.
god thing, pulls her off. And then you get the guy who's been wanting the merman all the time. He, after the grenade's gone off and he's been blown across the room, he finally sees a merman, and he's like, oh man, no.
The irony.
Yeah, the merman eats it. Like, it's crawled all that way from its elevator cell and got to him.
Yeah. It was great. And what sort of is the icing on the cake for this sequence, and it was an afterthought as well, was the blowhole of blood. And apparently like it lasted apparently almost 10 minutes when they were filming it. The blood just forever just pouring out. But it was like they decided to let the cameras roll, and as it was running out of blood, that was when it was like like just spitting, and that's the edit they took was when it was just running out. That little comedic touch.
It's just funny.
It's great. It's really great.
And Gary, the last technician, he drops down into the little tunnel area as well. He runs around the corner and he's stabbed in the gut by Dana, and he's in shock because he's like, "It's you. You need to kill him." And she dies. He dies, the technician. And Dana and Marty make their way down. They come to the sacrificial room, and they see all of the stone tablets with all of their kind of characterizations on them, the blood, and they look down, they can see something in the pit. And the director reveals herself, and it is Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Well, she's absolutely brilliant. If you're going to get anybody to be like the head of facility, because it was like she was in this. She was also in Paul. And I think she was also in Chappie. Was she in Chappie? I just remember that around about this time, there was like 3 films that I was just so surprised. Because Sigourney Weaver, we hadn't seen for absolutely ages, you know, but ever since Avatar, you know, she was just done Avatar, and she was working on Avatar 2 for the next 10 years. And then all of a sudden I see her in this, and I see her in Paul, and I see her in other things where she's just a tiny little part, and then she'll die. And I'm like, oh my God, Sigourney Weaver's still acting. And she's amazing.
Now, they wanted somebody iconic from the horror like genre, and apparently they also considered Bruce Campbell and Jamie Lee Curtis for the role, but I think they were both busy. But Sigourney was also intrigued because she really wanted to be in a movie that had a werewolf. And well, cue the werewolf, because the werewolf turns up and attacks Dana. And
well, that's because Dana was about to shoot Marty. The director has explained to Marty and Dana what this is all about, what's going on, and that if they live until morning, then the whole world dies. And so Dana is contemplating shooting Marty, and Marty lets the werewolf attack her. And then as Marty and the director are fighting over the gun, little Patience Buckner, who's made her way from the cabin through the elevator all the way through the facility, comes to here and stabs Sigourney Weaver.
And Marty kicks them both over the edge.
I
was like, well, Joss Whedon, you resurrected Ripley and then you killed Sigourney.
Then you killed her.
It's great.
I mean, I wonder if it would have been better if they got the guy from Reanimator as the director. Like, he would have been pretty fucking good. Or at least a subordinate, like him and Sigourney on the screen at the same time. That would have been really good.
But then, Dana and Marty, they kind of sit there. Like, Marty lights up a joint. It's like, well, I guess, it's time for somebody else to take charge now. Let's see if they can do any better. Like, well, humanity's about to get absolutely wiped off the face of the planet. But, these guys are kind of resigned to that.
Well, yeah, it's such a great ending because part of me is just like, they're massively selfish, But then at the same time, they're suffering from survivor's guilt. They've been forced into this situation. They never chose for this. Like, there are so many ambiguous questions about how long this ancient God has been there for, and how long this facility has been doing this for, and who's involved, and really who's in the right and who's in the wrong for this. Because when that hand smashes out of the fucking facility, out of the cabin, and just basically crushes your world in front of you, you're like, man, fuck yeah, because you feel that at the end of every horror movie. You're always just like, the last girl gets away, and you kind of feel hollow, like, oh, I want the last scare.
There'll probably be more sequels though, so it's not over. But at least this film goes, it's definitively over. Like, there is no sequels or prequels. I mean, I'd still love to know how they managed to capture all of those horror monster icons and get them in cubes underground.
Well, I think they grew them. Didn't they say there was a zoo? And he looks at one of the betting slips and goes, I don't even think we have them. Oh, the zoo department says we do. Well, they must know.
You're right.
Somebody grew a unicorn.
So I'm like, I do want a prequel, I want to see how, I mean, it's kind of redundant because the world ends here, so yeah. But at the same time, like, the film has also had such a great commentary on horror movies as we've come to know them, yet, like, the way that you can interpret this ending is that the ancient ones that wake up at the end are us, the audience, and when we watch a horror movie, that doesn't give us the goods,
Yeah.
we riot. And so all of the people, all of the office workers, they're the filmmakers.
Yes.
They're the ones with the lights and the cameras and the action.
Yes.
And then when they upset us, we attack them.
Yeah.
And in this film, they get absolutely pulled limb from limb. And so that is how audience or horror movie fans react when a horror movie doesn't give us the goods. And so I was like, that is just a great analogy of this film as well. That we are the ancient ones watching the horror movie.
We are the monsters.
Judging the filmmakers. We are.
We're the monsters.
Because we go back every year. Like, we've seen this movie before, but we'll come back a year later to see the next sacrifice because, well, we're monsters.
We're monsters.
Iain, what were your favourite scenes from Cabin in the Woods?
Oh, man, there are so many. There are so many great ones. I'll make it easy for myself to start off with most of the sequences with Marty in.
Yeah.
I think Marty was just a really great character, and Fran Kranz just played him so well. You know, I don't know if he's a real stoner.
No, I read that he literally they brought in some consultants to help him with his line delivery, his expressions and everything else.
They just got him to smoke weed and they just filmed him. Well, that's how I'd have done it.
That's how they did it in the 80s anyway.
But he just embodied and showed this character who we are, the audience. You know, we're always paranoid that somebody's watching us and that we're on reality TV and that, you know, we could be killed at any moment and blah, 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 blah. But he's also so calm about it that he's just like, I'll handle it when it comes along. And then when it comes along, he's freaking out like a fucking stupid idiot, which we all do. But, you know, he's the audience surrogate. We're telling people, we're always screaming at the TV, run, run. And so he's telling them, run, run. And then he is the guy at the end going, oh yeah, I'm just going to press the big red button and kill everybody. Yeah. And you're like, I'm kind of him.
Yeah.
I'm kind of him.
I'm sorry I let you get attacked by a werewolf and then into the world.
Gary and Steve, the two technicians, any sequence with them in is just absolutely brilliant. I love that whole ambiguous background of the facility. I want to know more about what's going on there. Like what Gary said, I want to know how they got these monsters and put them there and how long they've been doing it and what's the pay like? What's the holiday? Who cleans that facility? Do you just get cleaners in, or do you have zombie cleaners? You know, like, how do you deliver food? What's the hours like? Do you just live there like the facility in Resident Evil, like living underground, or do you just go, right, okay, I'm going home, I'll be back in on Monday? I don't know. The elevators opening up and all the monsters coming out, I just think they're absolutely brilliant. Like I said, over time, I think you might look at the effects, practical and CGI, and think, oh, they're a bit dated. But I think at the same time that'll work well with the movie, because that's what we do with older horror movies. I mean, actual experienced horror viewers do that by going, I'm going to go back and watch that old horror movie. We don't go, oh, it's old, it's in black and white, I'm not going to watch it because I won't understand. Sorry, I'm not mocking you, I just hate those people. Any sequences with Amy Acker in? I love Amy Acker. She's gorgeous. Shame she had to die an angel. It's a shame, really.
Yeah.
And my final favourite sequence, you know, I could go on for ages. The whole movie is just one absolute long favourite sequence. But the final sequence where you have the final girl and the final guy sitting there going, you know what? Fuck it.
Right.
And watching the world just explode.
Yeah, there are so many great scenes in this film. And I'm just going to go back to my first favourite, and that is Jules making out with that wolf head.
Oh, yeah.
And the little dance that she does in front of the fireplace.
I
It's like, ooh.
I'm glad you said that, because while I was watching the film, I went to pause it so I'd go to the toilet, and I paused it and walked out the room. Came back, and it was just that shot of her butt in front of the fireplace. I was like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, I also love the shot as they first approach the cabin and the leaves are blowing in the wind in front of it. I'm like, oh, Evil Dead.
Yes.
I love Mordecai on speakerphone. It's a great gag, great joke. I love when the cellar door bursts open. And I'm like, oh, Henrietta. Something's in my fruit cellar. And down they go and look at all of the relics and all of the icons that and wonder which demon or monster they're going to bring forth. Just love looking at that set and all of those things. It's great. Engage the pheromone mist. Love seeing the director or the staff kind of manipulating and making everything come together to make the scene play out like it would in a horror movie. That was great.
Show us the goods.
Does it really matter if we see
We're
her?
not the only ones watching, Ken.
Gotta keep the customer satisfied.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! Screaming at the 9-year-olds on the television monitor because they failed to sacrifice these 9-year-olds was great. Love that reaction.
Fuck you, fuck you.
How hard is it to kill 9-year-olds?
0 fatality. Total wash.
And there's another little gag that I like when Dana and Marty get into the elevator and the zombie arm's still going, and he just goes, "Oh, fucking zombie arm!" Because I had to disembowel it with a trowel.
Yeah,
it's just like, what?
And then it saves them from the security guard.
does,
He's like,
yeah.
"Thank you, zombie arm."
Right? Yeah.
Like, I want to know what that zombie arm was doing to the guy's face as it went off. Like,
was definitely gonna try to eat him.
Tried his own,
without a face, I don't know. And then of course the absolute carnage, the pandemonium, seeing all of those cages, all of the cells and the elevators moving around, watching those doors open and the army guys just getting torn to pieces and the blood and guts all over the walls is absolutely brilliant. Ian, do you recommend Cabin in the Woods?
I fucking massively recommend this fucking movie. I think it's everything that we've been waiting for since horror movies started. You know, we love the parodies, we love the homages, we love the paying backs and the cliches, and we love looking at something going, oh, I know how this is going to turn out, and who's going to survive this one, where they're going to go, and how it's all. We love doing all that. Cabin in the Woods knew that. They knew that going in, and then they just gave us more. It's just got absolutely everything you want from a really, really, really good horror movie. It's really well written. The creature effects are really well designed. The whole place is just the whole sets. All the sets are just brilliantly done. I can't praise this movie enough. It's always my go-to movie when people say, "Oh, that's a good horror movie." I'm like, "Is it as good as Cabin in the Woods?" No, then it's not a good horror movie. Because if Cabin in the Woods isn't going to stick it in their movie and make fun of it and turn it into like this bigger thing, then your horror movie's nothing. I know it went underneath the radar when it first came out, and I know it really only got advertisement from other movies that the other people had been in after, but that's what makes a good cult movie. And this movie is just gonna, I think, continue to be a cult movie for the next 50 odd years, and then they'll make a sequel and ruin it.
This film is absolutely fantastic. I've seen it multiple times and enjoy it more each time. So I'm giving this a must-watch rating, especially for horror fans, as this really is a heartfelt love letter to the genre. It's the ultimate monster movie mashup, with creatures and monsters and ghosts and zombies and unicorns. And the third act really delivers the gore and carnage that the film's premise slowly builds up to. It's a super meta horror film that rewards horror fans with tons of Easter eggs and references, while also commentating on the cliched horror tropes that we've seen hundreds of times, but in a very unique way now. The cast was great, the characters well written and performed, bringing an air of familiarity to the format, while still being likeable as they embody their archetypes. They make you care about their fates and root for them, both the teens and the office workers trying to prevent Armageddon. The creature effects and makeup work is excellent. The CGI is slightly noticeable at times, but it's still okay, as the creativity was so good. You want to know more and see all of these monsters cause mayhem, and so you can forgive some of the visual effects, as so much of it was done practically. So yeah, this is a must-watch. It's an instant classic for me, delivering a fresh spin on horror that's very memorable, highly entertaining, and endlessly rewatchable. 5 friends go into a cabin. Bad things happen. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.